He was born into a world that taught him early how to be quiet. Not because he lacked thoughts or curiosity, but because poverty has a way of silencing children before they learn how to speak for themselves. In the classroom, he sat upright, attentive, his hand often raised before anyone else. He wanted to answer. He wanted to be seen. Yet time after time, the teacher's eyes passed over him, choosing instead the clean uniforms, the polished shoes, the children whose presence did not make the room uncomfortable. His shoes were torn, his clothes stitched and restitched, and the scent of hardship clung to him like a shadow. Without a word being spoken, he learned that poverty could make a child invisible. Recess only deepened that lesson, while other students unwrapped lunches brought from home, laughing without restraint. He sat still, pretending not to look. Hunger pressed against his stomach with quiet persistence. But what hurt more was the way people stared. A piece of bread meant nothing to them. To his family, it meant survival. The whispers came easily. The laughter came faster. Each word landed softly, yet accumulated heavily. Settling somewhere deep inside him, he did not respond. Not because he was weak, but because he was storing something he did not yet understand. That silence did not last forever. One careless insult was enough to break it. Years of restraint surged forward in a single moment, raw and uncontrolled. His fist moved before his mind could stop it. The shock on everyone's faces was immediate. But for him, there was no relief. Only fear followed. Fear of punishment, fear of rejection, fear that he had confirmed everything they already believed about him. In that instant, he made a choice that would shape the years to come. He chose to run, not out of defiance, but because escape seemed safer than staying in a place that had never offered him dignity. Away from school and structure, life did not become easier. It became harsher, colder, and far less forgiving. Hunger was no longer occasional. It was constant. The streets did not ask questions, nor did they offer sympathy. Every day demanded resilience, and every night tested how much of himself he could lose without disappearing entirely. Yet even then, beneath the exhaustion and anger, something endured. A stubborn will, a quiet belief that his life could not possibly end where it had begun. This was not the story of a violent child, nor of a troubled youth seeking chaos. It was the story of a boy shaped by neglect, sharpened by survival, and driven by a need to be acknowledged as human. His anger was not born from cruelty, but from years of being unheard. And though the world had taught him silence, it had also unknowingly prepared him for a far louder future. One forged not in comfort, but in endurance. Life outside the classroom did not offer freedom. It offered exposure. Without routine or protection, each day became a negotiation with hunger, fear, and instinct. He drifted through streets that did not care who he was or where he came from. Nights were long, mornings unforgiving, and the future felt like an idea meant for other people. Choices are no longer weighed by right or wrong, but by whether they keep you alive for another day. Hunger is persuasive. It strips patience from the mind and replaces it with urgency. Alongside another boy, just as lost as himself, he began watching strangers, not with curiosity, but calculation. They waited. They observed, and when opportunity appeared in the form of a man stumbling down a narrow street, reason gave way to impulse. The plan was clumsy, driven more by desperation than intent. In a matter of seconds, everything went wrong. The man was not helpless. He was law enforcement. What followed was not triumph, but terror. Fear sharpened his senses. Footsteps echoed louder than gunshots in his mind. Sirens did not need to sound to be heard. Every breath felt heavy, every movement risky. When instinct told him to hide, he did not hesitate. He ducked into darkness, covering himself in filth, swallowing disgust and panic alike. In that moment, dignity was irrelevant. Survival demanded sacrifice. His heart raced, his body trembled, and time stretched unbearably thin. When danger finally passed, he was left standing alone, soaked in shame, stench, and clarity. Rock bottom does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it comes quietly, leaving you with nothing but yourself. As he walked home, exhausted and hollow, he caught sight of a television through a window. Bright images flickered against the glass, a world far removed from his own. Among them was a message he could not ignore. Training, structure, work. Not promises of luxury, but a path, a chance to earn, to learn, to belong. It did not offer escape from hardship, but it offered direction. And for someone who had spent years running in circles, direction was everything. The idea followed him home. It sat with him through the night, heavy but hopeful. Speaking to his mother was not easy. She had seen him struggle. She had seen him fail. Fear lived in her eyes, not disappointment. She worried the world would break him completely if he tried again. But she also understood something deeper. Running had taken him nowhere. Choosing effort, no matter how painful, might finally give him a future. With quiet strength, she gave him her blessing. Not with grand speeches, but with faith. Stepping into the program was not a miracle. It was uncomfortable, humbling, and demanding. He was inexperienced, awkward, and often behind others. Laughter followed his mistakes. Doubt whispered constantly. He remembered the filth, the fear, the moment when he nearly lost everything. Compared to that, struggle felt bearable. For the first time, hardship came with purpose. Each task completed, each rule followed, rebuilt something inside him that poverty had eroded. Rock bottom had stripped him of illusions. It had shown him who he was without excuses. But it had also given him something rare: perspective. He no longer sought shortcuts. He sought stability. He no longer fought the world blindly. He began, slowly, to face it. And though he did not yet know where this path would lead, he understood one truth clearly. This was his way out, not because it was easy, but because it demanded everything he was finally willing to give. Inside the training center, he was no longer invisible, but he was far from impressive. Surrounded by people who understood machines, routines, and rules, he stood out for the wrong reasons. His hands were strong, yet clumsy. His movements were heavy, unrefined. Every task exposed his lack of experience, and laughter followed him like an echo. But unlike before, he did not run. He lowered his head and continued working, carrying with him the memory of how far he had fallen and how close he had come to losing everything. It was during one of these ordinary days that something extraordinary surfaced. A moment of frustration, a careless outburst of strength, a single blow delivered without thought. The sound alone demanded attention. What others saw as recklessness, one man saw as potential. Beneath the rough edges, beneath the anger and imbalance, there was power of a rare kind. Not trained, not measured, but undeniable. For the first time, someone looked at him and did not see a problem to manage, but a force to shape. Boxing entered his life without ceremony. No dramatic invitation, no instant transformation. Just a ring, a pair of gloves, and an honest lesson. Strength meant nothing without control. Power meant nothing without timing. In his first sparring match, reality arrived quickly. He swung wildly, fueled by instinct and old habits, while his opponent moved calmly, avoiding every blow with ease. He was slow, predictable, exhausted when he finally fell. It was not pain that stayed with him, but humiliation. The laughter around the ring sounded painfully familiar. For a moment, anger threatened to take over again. The same anger that had ruined so many chances before. But this time, something stopped him. A voice, steady and firm, reminding him that failure was not an ending unless he chose it to be. He was told to watch, to learn, to accept that raw power without discipline was wasted energy. These words did not soften him. They sharpened him. Training became relentless. Footwork drills that burned his legs, repetition that tested his patience, conditioning that forced his body to confront its limits. Each day stripped away another layer of arrogance, replacing it with humility. He learned to breathe, to wait, to think. The ring stopped being a place to release anger and became a place to practice restraint. Slowly, his movements changed. The heaviness faded, the chaos quieted. When he stepped back into the ring for another match, he was not transformed, but he was focused. He did not chase his opponent. He observed. He did not rush his punches. He chose them. When the opening appeared, his fist landed with purpose, not rage. The fight ended quickly, not because of brute force alone, but because power had finally met discipline. The silence that followed was different from before. It was respect. Confidence grew, but it was no longer reckless. He began to dream again, this time with direction. The idea of competing at the highest level took shape in his mind, not as fantasy, but as ambition. His mentor listened, amused but honest. Greatness was not rushed. Skill demanded time. Experience demanded patience. But determination, when sustained, could bend time itself. This phase of his life was not defined by victory or loss, but by foundation. The boy, who once fought the world blindly, was learning to fight himself. Each controlled movement, each disciplined choice, rewrote the narrative that poverty had written for him. Raw power had opened the door. Discipline was teaching him how to walk through it. Success arrived faster than anyone expected, including himself. What began as disciplined training soon turned into an unstoppable ascent. Victory followed victory, each one louder than the last, until his name could no longer be ignored. From a boy once overlooked in silence, he became a force spoken of with awe. The ring, once a place of humiliation, transformed into a stage where his strength and will dominated all who stood before him. When he finally claimed the highest title, it felt as though the world had reversed its judgment. Applause replaced laughter. Admiration replaced neglect. For the first time in his life, recognition felt absolute. With triumph came abundance. Wealth arrived swiftly, too swiftly to be understood. Opportunities multiplied, doors opened effortlessly, and indulgence became routine. The discipline that had carried him upward began to loosen its grip. Training sessions shortened, focus drifted. The hunger that once fueled him was replaced by comfort, and comfort dulled the edge that had made him dangerous. He told himself he deserved it. After everything he had endured, the rewards felt justified. But the ring does not reward entitlement. It only rewards preparation. When defeat came, it came honestly. Across from him stood an opponent who understood patience, strategy, and restraint. Youth and power met experience and intelligence. He fought with confidence, but without caution, pressing forward with the same force that had once overwhelmed everyone else. This time, it was not enough. Each round drained his energy, each moment revealing the cost of neglect. By the time the final blow landed, the truth was undeniable. He had been outthought, outlasted, and outmaneuvered. The loss did more than take a title. It shattered an identity. The world that once celebrated him turned quiet again. Though this silence felt different, it was heavier. He questioned not only his abilities, but his purpose. The ring that had given him everything now felt empty. Without victory, without momentum, he was forced to face himself without applause. That confrontation proved more difficult than any opponent he had ever faced. He walked away, believing the chapter was closed. Faith offered him refuge. When ambition failed, he sought peace where competition once ruled, choosing reflection over conflict. Time softened his anger but also distanced him from the fire that once defined him. Life slowed. Routine replaced intensity. For a while, it was enough. Or so he believed. Then reality struck again, this time without warning. Trust misplaced led to financial ruin. Everything he had built, everything he had earned, vanished under the weight of debt and betrayal. Stripped of wealth and certainty, he stood once more at a familiar edge. Only now, he was older, heavier, and far removed from the man he once was. The past returned not as memory, but as consequence. In that moment, collapse was complete. Not just public, but personal. The fall from greatness is not measured by distance, but by silence. He had reached the top and lost it all, not once, but twice. The first rise had been powered by discipline. The fall had been caused by forgetting it. And as he stood there, facing the remains of a life undone, he understood something essential. The story was not finished, not because victory was guaranteed, but because surrender was no longer an option. This was not the end of a champion. It was the breaking point that would determine whether he was merely strong or truly unbreakable. Time has a way of reshaping ambition. Years passed quietly, smoothing the sharp edges of anger that once defined him. His body changed, heavier and slower, no longer built for dominance, but for endurance. He lived without the spotlight, valuing calm over applause, purpose over pride. The ring became a distant memory, something he believed belonged to a former life. Yet fate is rarely finished with those who once dared greatly. Just when peace seemed secure, reality returned with cruel precision. Financial ruin erased what little remained of his past success, leaving him burdened by debt and responsibility. Once again, he stood with nothing but his name and the weight of his choices. This time, desperation did not drive him toward shortcuts. It drove him inward. He understood that the strength of his youth could not save him now. If he were to return, it would require humility, greater than any punch he had ever thrown. He stepped back into the gym not as a conqueror, but as a student. The equipment was old, the mirrors unforgiving. Every movement reminded him of age and loss. But beneath the strain, something familiar stirred. Discipline, long neglected, slowly reawakened. Training became an act of faith. Each run tested resolve rather than speed. Each session demanded patience rather than aggression. He did not chase power. He rebuilt balance. He did not seek dominance. He refined timing. The mentor who once shaped him saw a different man now, less explosive, but far more controlled. Where anger once fueled his fists, purpose now guided them. The ring was no longer a battlefield for pride, but a place to prove resilience. When he returned to competition, expectations were low. Critics spoke openly, questioning not his courage, but his sanity. Age, weight, and time were stacked firmly against him. Yet inside the ropes, he fought with intelligence earned through loss. He absorbed pressure calmly, conserving energy, waiting. Each bout reinforced the same truth. Experience could compensate for speed. Composure could neutralize strength. Victory followed, not through force, but through understanding. As wins accumulated, disbelief turned into respect. He was no longer chasing debt. He was rebuilding identity. When the opportunity for a championship finally arrived, it felt less like destiny and more like closure waiting to be claimed. Across from him stood youth, confidence, and physical advantage. The audience feared for his safety. He feared something else entirely: regret. He refused to leave the ring, knowing he had not given everything. The fight tested every lesson life had taught him. He endured pressure without panic. He accepted pain without resentment. And when the moment appeared, fleeting and fragile, he acted with absolute clarity. One decisive strike ended years of doubt. The title returned not to the strongest man, but to the most resolved. The arena erupted, but inside, he felt only quiet relief. His legacy was no longer defined by power alone. It was defined by return, by the courage to rebuild when walking away would have been easier, by the humility to learn when pride demanded resistance. He became proof that greatness is not permanent, but character can be. His journey did not promise victory to all who struggle, but it offered something more honest. Redemption is possible, not by erasing the past, but by facing it without fear. He did not reclaim a belt. He reclaimed himself. This story is not merely about boxing, victory, or defeat. At its core, it is a story about human resilience, about how a life shaped by poverty, silence, and repeated failure can still rise. Not once, but multiple times, each return more meaningful than the last. The journey you have just heard reminds us that success achieved early can be fragile, but character forged through hardship endures. Strength alone may win battles, but discipline, humility, and perseverance are what sustain a life. What makes this story truly powerful is not the championship belts or public recognition, but the willingness to face collapse without denial, to start again without excuses, and to redefine victory beyond applause. It teaches us that falling is not the end of the story. Giving up is. No matter how far someone has risen, or how deeply they have fallen, there is always a moment where choice returns. A moment to stand back up, to rebuild, and to fight not for pride, but for purpose. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. What part of this story resonated with you the most? Do you believe true redemption comes from victory, or from the courage to begin again after loss? Share your perspective in the comments below. Your voice matters, and your story might inspire someone else who is still finding the strength to stand up again.